I'm going to open just by making a statement, which is, in my opinion, no concept in marketing matters more today than creative differentiation, and I'm going to try and substantiate that claim throughout the presentation. And I think all of this stuff is particularly important for you guys going out into your careers, because I'm not going to lie to you, it's a tough job market at the moment, and I would say a third, maybe more, of marketing tasks are now automatable. And I think that's going to hit the entry level of roles first. And a lot of the content of what we're talking about today is the judgment layer, the taste layer, that is very difficult to automate. So if I was going into marketing today, this would be the direction that I would go in to get a job. So no concept in marketing matters more. And one of the reasons for that, I don't know if you know this stat, but every single day we now produce more content, or enough content, that if it was a book, it would cover the entire world in books twice over. That's the volume of content that's being produced every single day. I conceive of it as an era of abundance. It's mass production of cheap, generic content. It's the slopification of the internet. There's actually, the head of X said that we've not even begun yet, within the next year or two, they said the internet's almost going to become unusable. Because we've seen what happens with ChatGPT and people putting content out in these generic articles. But now you have agents spinning up content 24/7, and it's going to flood the online space almost to such an extent that people were going to stop using digital devices. 90% of the world's data in total has been produced just in the last 2 years alone. Social media posting is up 50% in the last 2 years. And 50% of all of this content that's being produced is now AI generated. So you can see on this graph the convergence between AI generated articles and human generated articles. It's now reached that 50-50 mark. People actually think it's much greater than that more than 50% of the world's content is now AI generated. And that's because the AI is starting to sound like humans, and humans are starting to sound like AI. So being able to tell which one is which is becoming increasingly difficult. But all of that is to say that the marketing environment that people are entering into is a very noisy one, where there's a lot of generic crap being produced en masse, which means that the fundamental challenge for marketers is to stand out or fade out. You basically have to do two things. You have to capture people's attention, and then you have to be memorable. Because if you're not memorable, you're not going to get the purchase at the end of it. And that standing out point is one of the biggest challenges for today's marketers. So I thought I'd provide a definition. Creative differentiation is the art of making a brand stand out from the competition by using unique visual, narrative, or conceptual elements. This is so obvious that 100% of the people in the room will know the answer to this question. What brand's that? Yeah. And you don't need to see the logo, right? And you will all know as well that Coca-Cola put Santa Claus in red and white. That's why Santa is in red and white, because that's Coke's brand colours. So they branded Santa, right? That's creative differentiation. And Coke's a good example. I like giving Coke as an example because I think its market capitalization, the valuation of Coke, is 350 billion. And the market capitalization of Pepsi is like 100 and something billion. So Coke's got 3 times the market capitalization of Pepsi. And if you ask why is that, it's not because of the sugar water. If you do a blind taste test and you compare Coke and Pepsi, people can't tell the difference, right? So it's not the product. So what is it? It's the brand. What is it about the brand? The brand's memorable. Why is it memorable? Because they put bloody Santa in red and white. And I think that's one of the themes that will come through this. It's so arbitrary. It's so irrational. Yet that's driven 200 billion of market valuation on top of Pepsi. We're speaking about creative differentiation, but I'm going to use the word distinctiveness in place of creative differentiation. So when I say distinctiveness, I mean creative differentiation. And the reason I'm doing that is because in my learning, which may be different to yours, differentiation and distinctiveness are two very different things. And there's an argument at the center of marketing. There's a chap called Mark Ritson, and he comes from the school of classic differentiation. And if you remember about Porter's generic strategies and all of that we'll touch on in a moment, he's basically saying your product or service has to actually be meaningfully different from your competitors, You have to then position yourself for that target segment in a way that explains what those differences are. The competition then is against Byron Sharp, and he wrote a book called How Brands Grow, which I'm going to touch on. And he says that's nonsense. He says that's not how brands grow at all. It's not about actually being meaningfully different. You just have to be distinctive. You have to look and sound and feel different. Coke is not different from Pepsi. Why is it worth 3 times more? Because it's distinctively different. So I'm going to use the word distinctiveness to separate out the classical idea of differentiation, and this talk is about distinctiveness. So to contrast then back to differentiation, everyone's seen this, everyone knows this, I'm sure you all have, it's Porter's generic strategies. Classic business school stuff is you win by being either the cheapest or being meaningfully different. But that isn't how brands grow in the wild. When people have done research on how brands grow, that is not how they grow. So if I was to ask you a question, if you were to think of a distinctive brand, distinctive, what would you say?
I mean, we were talking about it yesterday or the day before, something like Liquid Death.
Oh, yeah. Great example.
The branding is like an energy drink.
Yep.
And that makes it very distinctive from like Evian
Yep.
or any other sort of generic water.
Brilliant example. I think that's spot on. It's better than the example that I've got, actually. Has anyone else got any things that come to mind when you think distinctive brand?
Innovative in a way.
Sorry?
Innovative in a way.
I didn't.
Innovative.
Oh, yeah. Why do you think that's distinctive? Why?
Because it's the differentiating point for the brand.
Yeah.
They're doing something new, something different from everyone else.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I actually asked a colleague what example they would give, and this is probably because I'm old now, but they said Skims. I don't know do people have any opinions on this? This is Kim Kardashian's brand. I only read the other day, it's worth £5 billion. I was like, what? And she's the majority shareholder. I had no idea it was that successful. But they were like, the reason that they gave that as an example was just small things about the branding itself, that they've taken the idea of curves and then they've applied that then to the logo, and then that's then applied to the stores, and they've used that kind of like skin colour tone across all of their stores. I don't really want to give that as a prime example because I think there's probably like 1,000,001 reasons why that's so successful. Personal brand just being one of them, and so many reasons. But the distinctiveness here on the brand level is how they've branded the store, is how they've branded their logo up. Okay, so I'm going to just give you an overview of how do brands grow. So this comes from, if there's a book called How Brands Grow by Byron Sharp. It's worth reading, in collaboration with the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, if you've ever come with them. And they do like marketing science. So they look at lots of and it's the world's most successful advertising campaigns, and they try to work out scientifically what's actually driving growth. Now, the first finding of how brands grow goes against a lot of common business knowledge, where you hear in the business world quite a lot, oh, it's cheaper to keep your existing customers than to acquire new customers. So your focus should be on driving customer loyalty. That's actually pretty much bollocks, in the sense of companies grow because they're attracting new customers. You have to get new customers coming to you. That's actually more important than customer retention. No one likes to say it because it sounds like you don't care about your customers. But you grow by acquiring new customers. How do you grow new customers? Two things have to come together at once to grow new customers. And those two things are mental availability and physical availability. How memorable are you? And the question is, how memorable are you specifically in buying situations? And how physically available you are. And this is a digital marketing course, and actually I'll have a question for you in a moment once I've explained this. Mental availability, physical availability, those two things coming together. So to give an example, let's say I'm sleep deprived because I've got a young baby at home and I want to go to the shop and have a pick-me-up. I go to the shop and I think I'm going to buy an energy drink. The first thing that comes to mind is Red Bull. Why has Red Bull come to mind? It's top of mind because they've invested billions of pounds in marketing over the last few years. Red Bull comes to mind. At the same moment, physical availability comes along, and there's also a specific Red Bull fridge right there. So not only are they top of the mind, it's frictionless to grab and buy. So mental availability coming with physical availability, leads to the purchase. Now, why I think this is interesting is, paid search ads? What's that? Is that advertising? A paid search ad. So let's say if literally men's trainers, yeah?
It's like a digital form of physical therapy.
Spot on. I'm pleased you say that, because I've had that conversation with so many people who do paid search advertising. They're like, oh, it's definitely advertising. But advertising, the function of advertising is creating mental availability. It's creating brand. What mental availability do you get from having men's trainers in a Google search? There's no mental availability comes to that. It is the digital form of physical availability. And why that's important, the insight that you've just given there, is what brands do, and we'll talk about this in a moment, is they throw money, paid search, thinking it's generating demand. It's not generating demand. It's capturing existing demand in the market with digital availability, as you said, which means they don't spend enough building demand and investing in brand. And that is actually a core problem if you walk into your professional life, and we're going to talk this into a moment. When you start your professional life as a marketer, you're going to think that everybody understands marketing. Nobody understands marketing. Your boss won't understand marketing. Your boss isn't even going to be a marketer. Your boss is going to be a salesperson who's got promoted, because that's what happens. The salespeople get promoted above marketers, and they don't understand marketing. And then they're reporting into a CEO who probably also doesn't understand marketing. They're probably also a salesperson. And they're reporting into a board of directors who definitely don't understand marketing. They're finance people. And then you're going to talk about this, and they're going to be like, what the hell are you on about? Just prove to me what's measurable. So part of the job that when you actually go into the working world isn't all of your theoretical understanding of marketing. You're going to come with them with all of that information, and they're not even going to listen to you. You have to be able to translate what you're saying into finance language, because it's the finance people who are going to sign off your budgets, and it's the finance people who are going to fire you if you don't get a return on investment. So you end up having to speak the language of finance to these people. Sorry, that was a bit of an aside, but thank you for the point about digital availability. So it's those two things coming together, mental availability and digital availability. So we're talking about creative differentiation, and if you remember, I've called it distinctiveness, like Byron Sharp, so they're the same thing. How distinctiveness works is to become distinctive, you use fluent devices, and we'll touch on those in a moment. They're heuristics that make it mentally easy to connect a brand so that you remember them. So it's things like, we'll go into this, like fucking jingles and slogans and mascots, like should have gone to Specsavers. That's a fluent device. That creates memory structures so that you remember Specsavers and you remember Skims, which means that when you're in a buying moment, or what they call a category entry point, the moment that you're actually looking to purchase, you remember that brand. So true advertising is about creating memory structures using fluent devices to make a brand distinctive, and that's how you grow your market share. I've just described what a fluent device is, so I'm not going to go into that again. 4 types of fluent devices: mascots, jingles, slogans, and then reoccurring scenarios. So the reoccurring scenarios, like the John Lewis ads that people, they look forward to the John Lewis Christmas ad. It's almost like a cultural event. That itself is a fluent device. So can you think of any examples of them being used in advertising?
There's in the States, I'm not sure, I think it's nationwide, there's an insurance company that always has the commercial based around mayhem. So they have a character who is mayhem, and he causes issues in every commercial and then laughs about it.
Brilliant.
And revels in it. And then it's like, use our insurance so that this doesn't happen.
Brilliant. That's a perfect example. And what's great about that is at some point, somebody would have pitched that idea to somebody. And it sounds kind of ridiculous, right? But we will touch on this in a moment. The companies who do that, their ads are like 40% more effective. Because people remember it. You've remembered it. Therefore, it's worked. Can anyone else think of any examples? Slogans, you know?
Like Churchill with the nodding
There you go. That's, yeah, perfect. Yep. So I've just got a few obvious ones. This is 16 years old now. And when I put this in there, I was like, I'm 36 now. So you guys may not have even grown up, but you're my age, Molly. You remember this.
Insurance, meerkats, 2 very different things. Listen there, listen mine. Compare the meerkat. Don't even sound same. Compare the meerkat.com, compare the market.com. Simples.
There's a guy called Rory Sutherland. Have you heard of Rory Sutherland? It's worth reading him. He's got a book, Alchemy, something. It's called Alchemy. I think the reason that's interesting is, like I say, when you go into the world of work, all of this seems obvious now, right? You're like, okay, they've used a meerkat, that's made it memorable. But then as soon as you go into the world of work, nobody thinks like this. Everything is hyper-rational, it's hyper-measurable, it's what proves a return on investment. Can you imagine, this is an insurance company. Somebody went to finance guys in an insurance company going, you know what's going to work? A meerkat. It's nonsense, it's completely irrational. Well, sales doubled, market share increased by 76%. They've doubled the size of their business using a meerkat that's got nothing to do with insurance, literally nothing to do with it. If we pitched that to one of our clients, they'd be like, what's a meerkat got to do with our business? Do you know how much work is required to get people to actually believe that this stuff works? That's the challenge. The challenge isn't you understanding that this stuff works. Your challenge is going to be explaining this to people who think you're an absolute loony. So the idea of Rory Sutherland and alchemy is the best marketing is irrational. It doesn't really make sense. I've only got one more example. I don't want to go overkill. But
This says block 2. It's over there, mate.
the reason I like that one is the slogan, should have gone Specsavers, is so strong. They don't even have to articulate it. There's no voiceover that actually says it, because you know the punchline of the joke, because the fluent device has done its job. So we said there's 4 different types of fluent devices. There's brand mascots, there's jingles, there's reoccurring scenarios, there's slogans, examples, the meerkat example. The jingles, I didn't put that in, but that's like, ba-da-da-da, I'm loving it. That's the McDonald's sort of thing. The reoccurring scenario, did you say those links effects? This is, again, the ads that I had when I was growing up. You'll remember them, Molly, where the guy sprays loads of links on him and like women chase after him. That's a reoccurring scenario example. And then the slogan should have gone to Specsavers. And this works, yep. Okay.
With obviously all of the examples you gave before are all B2C, is it similar with
my entire section's about B2B next.
Okay.
The cut through to that is, yes, it works exactly the same way, because mental structures work exactly the same way. B2B companies who have got a strong and well-known brand grow twice as fast as companies without. But it's quite likely you're going to end up in a B2B marketing job. B2B marketing is very common in the UK. It's even we're a B2B marketing agency. It's even harder to convince people how to do it properly, even harder. But it works exactly the same way. It's a good question, because you preempted my entire next section, which I can almost skip now because I've given you the overview. This is just to say it's effective and it works. So takeaways, distinctiveness versus differentiation. Big argument at the heart of marketing. Distinctiveness, how brands grow, by Byron Sharp. You grow by winning new customers. How do you win new customers? Mental availability and physical availability, or as you say, digital availability coming together. And that's a very good point to mention if you're studying digital marketing. This is a question about budget allocation and media spend. Too many companies spend their money on what is basically digital availability, which is paid search campaigns. They're not spending enough on brand. The aim is to become memorable and build mental availability. It can be done with fluent devices like mascots, slogans, and jingles, and it works. And we know it works. Sure, but does this work for B2B? Which is this is where the pushback we get all of the time as a B2B marketing agency. Does it work for B2B? Yeah. Yes, it works for B2B. B2B companies with a strong brand go twice as fast as competitors. Have you come across the day one list concept? It's researched by Gartner. So again, you're doing digital marketing, right? What a lot of B2B companies want to do is they want to throw money at the bottom of the funnel when people are searching for CRM software or something like that. because they think that the moment that person has gone into market, they're making the decision at that point. But that's not how B2B buying works. B2B buying works before they've even begun the search. You've heard of companies like HubSpot or Salesforce, the kind of CRM that you want to work with. They've already got a reputation in your mind. So the day one list stuff says 93% of B2B buyers purchase off that day one list. They may then go, B2B buying is just more complex than B2C, that's probably one of the main differences. You have an entire buying committee, they go and do lots of research between them. So they then go into the search engines and they look at your advertising and they do all of that, but it's usually to confirm going with a vendor that they already wanted to go with before they started that process because they'd heard of them and they had a reputation. So IBM is a good example of that, where everyone goes, you never got fired for buying IBM because their brand is that strong. So this is just as important, if not more, in B2B, but the barrier is even greater because stakeholders don't believe that. Because the most important search engine is still the mind. One of the reasons we always say this is because we're a digital marketing agency. Everyone talks about search engine optimization and paid search, and have you come across like GEO and LLM search and all of that? Like, it's all about search is what we do. But the reality is people go to their memories before they go to search engines. Oh, thank you. We call this the sea of sameness. I don't know if you've seen this, but this is in the B2B landscape. Let's say if you graduate, you become a marketer for an IT services company. They all look the same. All of the finance companies look the same. Now, the reason that they do this, one of the reasons that they do this is the color palette in a given segment. So say if you're in IT services, it may well be that all the big players use blue and white. So sometimes it might be good that you don't want to stand out from that crowd because you're trying to look like one of the big players. However, from an advertising point of view, that is not effective. So this is what we call the sea of sameness. Everything looks the same and sounds the same because people want to blend in. So what you do in marketing is you see what is the color palette that segment is using as part of the sea of sameness, and you literally look at the opposite side of, those color wheels. There's something opposite to that color. So this example is everyone's blue, go orange, and that orange then stands out against that background, and that's how that's how you create the visual look of a contrarian or challenger brand. So you're creating a contrarian or challenger brand. So this is an example with one of our clients. So this is a cybersecurity company. All of the cybersecurity companies are blue and white. All of them are talking about what's called pen testing, penetration testing. They're all talking about technical cybersecurity stuff. We then go the complete opposite colours, and we lead with, you deserve to be hacked. Because it's so in your face, it stands out, and it's memorable. Because of that, the marketing is way more effective. So this is just another example in the B2B space of a Fluent device, very briefly.
Nice, but too many beans. Hello, darlings, Aunt Ed. Futuristic scooters, old school website. Relax, web upgrades, I own them. Better design, e-commerce, high performance. Now you're fit for the future. Easy peasy. I screwed off now. Your digital partner, Ionos.
Again, so this is like a hosting company, B2B. They use Aunt Helga as the Fluent device. I think I've only got one more example, and this isn't Fluent devices. This is for one of our clients. So this is an ad that we created. It won the campaign. Yeah.
They know it.
Do you?
By heart.
You've seen us use this before. Hey, look at that.
We used it in class several times.
Oh, I'm going to tell the guys that. I'll skip it then because this guy just basically gets shit on.
I have a question.
Yeah.
After the watch.
Yeah. And this isn't as clever as some of the other ads you've seen because, but it's just, again, standing out from the crowd of how people sell CRM software.
Jeff, top 10 sales reports split by region. Let me check. Forget it.
And the process that you go through with something like that, usually when you're doing something like this, you do a bit of research into the audience. You find that the audience find it frustrating to use slow products. And then you take that emotion that they're experiencing and you come up with a creative platform that then articulates it in a way that stands out. And what's interesting about this kind of advertising, even though it's brand advertising, it does both short-term sales and long-term brand building. You get both of those effects. If you just focus on short-term sales, so that's the paid search stuff, you only get short-term sales, there's no brand effect. These brand videos create both brand uplift and short-term sales uplift simultaneously. You gonna say?
I have a question. I just want to validate something because we were talking on Monday about logos and fonts and colors and color palettes, process influencing, building the brand, especially for brands starting from scratch, which is one of the clients they need to work on.
Okay, yeah.
And there's the common knowledge is that you need to have the brand, the logo prominent everywhere to intoxicate your audience so that it builds that recognition over time, which is absent in here. And we have a working hypothesis, but I was curious where that choice came from to only put the brand and the logo at the very end.
I actually don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if that was a conscious decision by the team or not.
Do you guys remember what our running assumption was on Monday? Oh no, we should put this on the spot. Could it have anything to do with the fact that you're talking about the competition in the front end and you don't want that imagery and that idea to be associated with the brand?
That is a very good idea. I hope that was the reason and that they put that much forethought into it. Because I guess what you're saying is at the beginning, they're literally, I was going to say shitting on the competition. The joke is at the expense of the competition and you don't want to associate the logo with that joke. It's a good working hypothesis, and I tell you what, Dr. Franku, I will check with the team who worked on this back at the office, and I will let you know the answer to that question. And I'm very honoured that you're using advertising in your courses. I'll also bring that back to the team. So yeah, this is just to show it works. So this is what I was talking about a moment ago, which is, I was doing some research the other day, and the S&P 500, so like the stock market, 93% of the value of the stock market is now intangible assets. So if you value companies, it's intangible assets, not tangible assets. And brand is the biggest driver of that. So when investors are buying stocks and shares on the market, they're really buying the brand value. Think of the Coca-Cola example. They're not buying the sugar water, they're buying the brand. But if you get a CMO, a chief marketing officer, especially in a B2B space, and they go to the board and they say, I want you to sign off budget for brand building, 40% of them lose the confidence of the board. And this has happened recently with a colleague of ours who has gone in-house and he's now the CMO of a company. He literally can't speak to them about brand. They don't want to hear it. It's honestly remarkable. I've seen it with ex-clients of ours where they've invested in brand and we've even been able to prove it works and they've still gotten fired. Because the obsession in the world that you're going into is measurability, measurability, measurability. Short term, is this, especially in today's UK business climate, is this going to hit our Q1 profit target? Is it going to drive EBITDA up now or not? And if the answer is no, they don't invest. Their own peril as well. So it's not that they won't ever invest, you just have to take them on a journey. So yeah, this is a problem, but this is the reality of what you're going into. Let me have any questions or thoughts on that component of it.
Does it help to show them a slide like the one just before this one with the Workbooks campaign driving 77 million impressions?
Yeah.
And all the financial side of it as well?
That is how we sell it in, yeah. We give them a little bit of the theory, we give them practical examples, we show how those examples have led to results for clients, and then you say to them, because what you're trying to get them to do is invest in brand rather than short-term sales, you try to say to them, this is what we can measure, because you can measure things like, have you come across share of search, share of voice. Share of search is a very easy thing to measure, where you can simply go into Google Trends and you could look at a load of competitors within a category, and you could look at how many times people are searching for that brand name, and you can express that as a percentage. And if you invest in brand, the first thing that you will see is your share of search and your share of voice going up. People are talking about your brand more as a percentage of searches for the total category. And there's a lot of research that shows share of search and share of voice goes up, and then market share then follows after that. So you're not saying to these people, we can't measure brand investment. You're saying, here's a load of short metrics we can use to measure, and you're going to see the sales results in 6 to 12 months' time. It's just, even with, I mean, Molly will have seen this when in her paid media role, even with case studies, even with theory, even with measurability, even with, we put forecasts together, we do a lot of like elaborate like mathematical modelling around it. Even with all of that, the attitude in the UK business community amongst a lot of people, not everybody, is if this doesn't drive results in this quarter, we're not going to invest in it, full stop. It's pretty bad. So good luck with it. I wish I was more cheery on that point, but we've just worked in the industry for too long. B2B companies with a strong brand grow twice as fast as those with a weaker one. So it does work in B2B. B2B buyers have a day one list, 93% purchase from that day one list in their mind before they do any research. You get a lot of sea of sameness, so you want to make the decision if you're a B2B company, are you going to look like everybody else, or are you going to be a challenger brand? Challenger brands do better in advertising, but CMOs don't want to sign off investment. So I've got one more section, and then we can just chat for 10, 15 minutes about the working world and any career advice and all of that. So I just want to situate distinctiveness in the arc of marketing history as I see it, at least. And my experience has been like, it was almost like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, up to 2000s, people were doing classical marketing, the kind of stuff that you learn when you're on a marketing degree. They were learning about brand, they were learning about advertising. There were lots of classical advertising campaigns back then, and brand was well understood. And then we went into this era, probably starting around the 2000s, and this has been marketing for the last 20 years. Everything became hyper-measurable. So digital marketing, just what you're learning about, and performance marketing in general, it's the wet dream of the board members that I was talking about before, who are completely finance and metric driven. Because instead of it being some vague, amorphous concept, you can say, oh, if you invest £100,000 in paid search, it's going to deliver £500,000 in return within the next quarter. And this is what your cost per click is going to be. This is what your cost per impression is going to be. This is what your conversion rate is going to be. It feels certain and measurable. So for the last 2 decades, we've been in that performance marketing world. And we're only just exiting back to more classical marketing. And I'll talk about that in a second, but I just want to give you an example of how it's gone wrong so badly. So I spoke about how the measurability made people invest in performance marketing, but it made people invest in the bottom of the funnel of performance marketing, which has inflated all of the costs. And the perfect example of this is Adidas. So has anyone seen this case study? It's an interesting one. So in 2015, Adidas, I'll explain what went wrong in a moment, I won't get ahead of myself, but they shifted 1 billion of their marketing budget from brand towards digital advertising, performance marketing, bottom of the funnel stuff. So what I mean by that is they started doing this sort of thing where it's like, okay, people are searching for men's trainers, I'm going to just dominate the search engine result pages. I'm going to dominate the top paid search, I'm going to dominate Google Shopping. That's what I'm going to spend my money on. And in the immediate term, they got like an incredible ROI for it. Like this quarter, they absolutely smashed it. Because what they were doing, have you seen this graph before from Binet and Field? This is like a classic advertising graph, and this was based on like the most effective marketing campaigns or whatever. And there's 2 lines on it. One is what happens with sales activation. So that's the paid search ads that we just saw a moment ago. This is sales activation. It's capturing the demand that's already in the market. People are already searching for men's trainers. They're already searching for Adidas. I'm going to get digital availability, and I'm going to make sure I'm present. I'm going to capture the sales demand that already exists. The problem is, if you just do that, you get these peaks and troughs where when you spend more, you get a temporary uplift in sales. What you need to do alongside that is brand building activity at the same time, and that's what gives you the long-term growth, because that's creating more demand for your product in a given category. And what Binet and Field found was there's an ideal percentage split between budget, and you should spend 60% of your budget on brand building and 40% on sales activation. Slightly different for slightly different segments, but as a top level heuristic, that's how you should do it. 60% on brand building, 40% on sales activation. What Adidas did was they killed all of the brand budget and they put it all on sales activation. So that's the decision that they took. And at the same time, Nike went the opposite way, and Nike was doing this sort of thing with Colin Kaepernick. I won't play the entire ad, I think it's just...
And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
So in that same time, Nike was doubling down on like the core identity of the soul of the aspirations of an athlete and any aspiring athlete and anyone who wants to better themselves. They were doubling down on brand identity. And in that exact same time period, Adidas's growth flatlined and diminished and Nike took off. And that's where Nike started beating Adidas in the competition. There was a quote, I hope it's on here, yeah, and I decided I don't normally give the whole quote, but I just thought it was so illustrative. The CMO who made the decision to make this change actually took ownership of the situation, which I respect, and explained why. He said, we've over-focused on the short term and we've over-invested in performance marketing. We were focusing on the wrong metrics, the wrong data, and the wrong things. When we look back at the data, we'd been over-focusing on efficiency and not effectiveness. Our attribution model, if you're doing digital marketing, you've come across attribution modeling, was based on last click. And that was paid search. So what they were doing was they were looking at all of their data, and all of the platforms lie to you. That's one of the things you've got to remember about digital marketing. Google and Facebook and Meta, they all want to claim attribution for that sale. They all want to say that sale came from us, so you spend more money on them. So Google search was saying, oh, all of this value is being driven by the fact that they've clicked on your paid search ad. So Adidas was like, oh, well, that's where the value is going to come from. I'm going to shift all of my budget there. And that wasn't the case at all. But because then we looked at incrementality. Have you come across incrementality testing in anything that you're doing? So this is all part of trying to work out measurement and trying to work out ROI. Part of it uses attribution modeling, but another way of measuring whether something works or not is called incrementality. And that's simply turning it off and turning it on again. Okay, paid search is delivering all of this value. What happens if we turn paid search off? And what Adidas found is they turned paid search off and it wasn't delivering all of the value anyway, because people were already searching for them if they wanted them and they would find them some other means. So it's just an interesting case study in how it all went wrong. So I think there was this classic age of brand, people understood proper advertising. For the last 20 years, we've gone into this performance marketing world, which is all about short-term measurement. That's not been good for marketing, and now I think we're going back into a new era. And I think several things have happened. If you've come across the third-party data, cookie degradation stuff, so because of all the privacy laws, people don't like being tracked online. So because of that, you now have to accept cookies or not accept cookies. That basically means that you can't retarget people, you can't collect data on people. All of the ways in which digital marketing was really measurable has now diminished. That's happened at the same time as all of the channels, so like Google and Meta, it's all become so expensive because everybody's throwing money at it. At the same time as generally, I think this is probably the lowest trust environment I've ever lived in terms of how much we as the public trust institutions. And that we also don't trust brands. So all of those things is meaning the pendulum is swinging back to brand. How do you actually build trust with your audience? And I think it's actually quite a good time for you guys to be going into the world of marketing if it wasn't for AI taking so many of the entry-level roles, because I actually think there's going to be a resurgence of people wanting to understand marketing at a deep academic level, because for the last 20 years that's not been the case. The last 20 years have been really technical people running marketing, not creative people, not academic people, not people who understand marketing. And no offense, we've employed a lot of those very technical people, but the pendulum is swinging back to brand. These are my final points, and then we'll stop for questions. I don't know if anyone came across this. This happened in February. In the SaaS space, software as a service. It was actually just one day, but it was over the course of a week. 1 trillion of stock market value was wiped off these software as a service companies. Do you know what happened? This was in February. In that week that wiped 1 trillion of stock market value off. Very specific technical product launch. Anthropic's Claude? Anyone come across Anthropic's Claude? Has anyone downloaded Cowork and Claude Code and played with it? So if you do that, you can download it onto your Mac, and it's the Mac extension for Claude Cowork. You can now, I can vibe code a CRM system. Seriously, and it'll work. You can build websites in minutes with it. And you don't even, I'm an idiot, I'm not even that technical. And you can build your own software. So for all of these software companies, why do I now need to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds on software licenses for my CRM system when I can literally build my own for the cost of tokens? So I want to look at all of this through the lens of the technological shifts with AI, because it does change everything. It does change the working landscape that you're going into. Because it's automating coding, it's automating content, it's automating finance, it's automating workflows, it's automating, I think, in terms of what we do as a digital marketing agency, already today you can automate 30% of the tasks, maybe 40% of what an agency like us does. And within a year, it'll probably be 60%. There's just a lag time between the technology existing and us being able to operationalize it and roll it out. And it's just going to eat up more and more of those execution tasks. So, to back up my point of why did I say at the beginning then, creative differentiation is one of the most important things you can learn about, why is brand one of the most important things you can learn about, is actually brand becomes a competitive moat. If you've heard that phrase, competitive moat, it's like, how do you defend your business from your competitors? You have a moat around the business. Okay, so look at the software example. The actual coding of the software itself is no longer a competitive moat because people can code their own software. Brand, though, is not replicable. Brand is your own unique identity. So your ability to tell stories, make emotional connection, is even more important than ever. Trust is going to become a more scarce resource. People won't know who to trust. And because of all of this, there's now been an increased demand in certain jobs. So there's an increased demand. People with storytelling in the job title has more than doubled. People are looking for storytellers. Content strategists are experiencing salary growth. Community marketing managers are growing. AI creative directors are growing. Brand strategists are growing. So I know, if I was a student, if I was you guys, I wouldn't feel great about the job market I was going into, being completely honest with you, because that entry-level role is being automated away. But at the same time, it's creating more jobs. Because let's say if I'm a company and I've got access to AI tools and the next company has got access to AI tools, okay, great, we all produce the same generic slop. How's that going to work? Well, you have to be able to stand out. You have to be able to say something different. That's where the human taste, the human judgment, the human intuition comes in. That becomes even more important than ever, actually. So to wrap it all up, so distinctiveness is the ability to stand out or fade out, the ability to get remembered. Distinctiveness is why you buy Coke over Pepsi. Distinctiveness is a meerkat doubling your sales of insurance when it's completely irrational. And this part of marketing is what will grow in demand with AI. It won't diminish because of AI, it will grow in demand. So yes, you're coming from analytical backgrounds, yes, you're coming from academic backgrounds. I think that will stand in your stead. I think the more you are able to tell stories, I think the more that you're able to connect, I think the more you're able to read the cultural moment and apply taste, because we have a lot of creatives, right? Our creatives are using AI all the time. Of course they're using AI all the time. I am not a creative person. Our creatives can produce something that's 10 times better than what I can produce with the same tools. Why? Because they have taste. They're more cultured than I am. So there's no doubt about it, you have to master the use of AI tools. You have to. That's actually the table stakes, really, for getting a job. There isn't going to be a role where you're not going to be using those tools. But by itself, that isn't the solution, because everybody's got access to the same tools. So it's what you're bringing on top of that, which is, as I say, human taste, human judgment, human intuition, your ability to tell stories, your ability to connect, your ability to look at data, your ability to influence stakeholders, to get sign-off on budget, your human skills, all of those become more valuable than ever. And that's not going to go away in the near term, so I wouldn't worry about that. And I think if you do master that, you will become irreplaceable to companies. And I actually think you do have a slight advantage going into the workforce at the moment, because I do think there is a degree of ageism that happens with AI, where people want young people who are curious, who are innovative, who are digital natives, who understand all of this technology. That's the kind of thing that we look to hire for. It has shifted. We used to look for people with a really strong academic background. That's less of a thing for us now. I want to know that you're curious. I want to know that you're resilient. I want to know that you're willing to try new things and to innovate. And if you've got those character traits, employers are going to be looking for that. So, finished 10 minutes early, so thank you. And any questions, and we can have a chat.